The Screaming Goat of Chefchaouen full horror story. We've all been told stories about goats acting weird or goats with devilish origins. But today we have a story about a goat that sounds scary enough to make any hiker run home. This story is the Screaming Goat of Now, this terrifying tale comes to us from Morocco, specifically the popular tourist destination Chefchaouen, also known as the Blue Pearl of Morocco. Chefchaouen is known for its beautiful blue streets, picturesque buildings, and lush mountains. However, according to local legend, there is a dark secret hidden in these mountains that has been haunting the area for decades. Now, let's meet our main character in this story. A lonely man named Ahmed, who lived in a small village on the outskirts of the forest surrounding the city. Ahmed was a quiet man who spent most of his time alone in a small house with his goats. But one night, everything changed. It was a cold winter night. The snow was falling heavily outside and the wind was howling through the trees. As Ahmed sat in his house, he could hear the goats making their usual noises outside. But then suddenly he heard a loud scream. It was a terrible noise that seemed to come from the forest. Ahmed froze and listened intently. There it was again, a blood-curdling scream that echoed through the valley. He rushed to the door and stepped outside. As he looked out into the darkness, he could see that the goats were nowhere to be found. In the morning, when the sun finally peeked through the clouds, Ahmed went out to search for his missing goats. He called their names, but there was no answer. All he found was a trail of blood leading away from his house. Following the trail, Ahmed came across a clearing where he found the bodies of his goats lying lifeless on the ground. Their throats had been slit open, and there was no blood anywhere. It was as if they had been drained of their life force. But what made this scene even more disturbing was the fact that all of the goats were staring directly up at the sky with empty, soulless eyes. There was one goat that was missing though. The smallest one, a tiny black goat with pale, cloudy eyes. And oddly enough, this goat didn't seem to be scared of Ahmed at all. In fact, it just stood there staring straight at him. It didn't move, eat, or drink, and it didn't seem to blink either. It was as if the goat wasn't even alive. That night Ahmed didn't sleep. He spent the entire night listening to the forest, waiting for whatever had taken his goats to come for him. Every time a twig snapped or an owl hooted, he flinched, and then he started hearing it again, the same terrible scream that he had heard the night before. It was a sound that made his blood run cold. When the morning finally arrived, Ahmed was exhausted, but he knew that he couldn't keep living in fear. He had to find out what had happened to his goats and why he was hearing these terrifying screams. So he decided to do something crazy. He gathered some food and water and set off into the forest to find the source of the screaming. He followed the trail left behind by his goats, hoping to find some answers. As he walked deeper into the forest, the trees started to close in around him, blocking out the sunlight and making the path ahead seem darker and more ominous. But he continued on, driven by a desperate need to understand what had happened. After walking for hours, Ahmed finally came across a clearing, and what he saw there made his heart sink. There were hundreds of hoofprints in the soft earth, but they weren't the hoofprints of a goat. They were much bigger, deeper, and spaced, like something that was walking on two legs. Ahmed felt a chill go down his spine. Could this be the work of some wild animal, or was there something more sinister at play? Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, Ahmed continued to follow the trail. He soon came across a narrow passageway between two rocky cliffs, and as he walked through, he could feel the air growing colder and darker. Just then, he heard it again, the blood-curdling scream that had become his worst nightmare. This time, though, the screams seemed to be coming from inside the passageway. With a mix of fear and determination, Ahmed stepped into the darkness and disappeared from view. Now, Ahmed never came back from that passageway. Days turned into weeks and still there was no sign of him. Some say he simply ran away from the terrifying ordeal he had encountered. Others claim that whatever was lurking in that passageway had claimed another victim. Now, this story doesn't end with Ahmed, you see. People started coming forward with their own experiences of strange occurrences in the area. A woman who hiked the mountain at night said she heard a goat cry from the trees, but when she returned during the day, she found claw marks on her car. A tourist claimed to have taken a photo of a goat standing on a ledge, but when he checked his phone, the photo showed a man's face in place of the goat. Then in 2012, a group of backpackers vanished while camping in the mountains. Their tent was torn to pieces and one camera was recovered. The last footage showed a shadow of something standing outside the tent with two glowing eyes and a voice that seemed to come from another world saying, "Do not follow the scream." The locals say that whatever is haunting the mountain doesn't take the form of a goat anymore. Instead, it's taken the form of Ahmed's last goat, the tiny black goat with pale, cloudy eyes. It feeds on the grief of those who lose their loved ones in the mountains and twists itself into a creature that hunts those who enter its domain. It uses its knowledge of the mountains to lure unsuspecting hikers off the beaten path, only to strike when they are most vulnerable. Some say the scream is the jinn's way of calling out to its victims, a siren call that is impossible to resist. Others say the scream is a warning, a desperate attempt by the jinn to scare off those who have stumbled into its lair. But whatever the truth may be, those who hear the scream should heed its warning and run away fast, because if the jinn catches you, there is no escape. Now, I want to know what you think about this story. Do you believe in DJ and stories like this? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like this story, please don't forget to subscribe for more scary content like this. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next video.